Good evening. I'd like to call this Thursday, March 10th, 2022 meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Today we'll be following the published and posted agenda. This is a Zoom meeting. It's available via Zoom and also broadcast live on Comcast 99 and Verizon 37. First on the agenda this evening is the approval of minutes for February 10th, 2022. Want to have a chance to review them?
I wasn't there, so I'd have to abstain anyway.
Okay. John, David, Sam, have you guys had a chance to review?
Yes.
I move to accept.
I'll second.
I second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So 4 in favor, 1 abstention, and 2 absent. Thank you. Next on agenda, we have our first presentation, the review of the fiscal year 23 budget for the Cemetery Commission. With us this evening, we have David Boyle as Cemetery Superintendent. Good evening, Dave. How are you?
Good. How are you, Jim? Good evening to everybody. How are you all?
I'm doing well. I'll speak. I can speak for myself. I'm doing well.
Okay. So just to start off, obviously it was requested a level funded budget. We have stuck with that. Looking at the numbers, basically on the personnel side, the increases are just step related, because we're myself and my three people are non-union now. They're on the personnel side. So that would be just step increases there as far as that goes. So you can see that increase there. On the expenses, we did increase the gasoline and the diesel, obviously because of the state of what's going on right now. So in anticipation of it could possibly go higher, we did increase that those two lines.
Here. Can everyone see the budget there? Or is that not showing up for people?
I don't see it.
All right, hold on one
I don't
second.
see it either, Jim.
For some reason, it is. You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. It's because I had it on the wrong screen here. There we go.
There we go.
So this page basically goes over the operations. That first page is basically the operations and so forth. This is the objectives for fiscal year 23. And you can see there's sale of cemetery lots. So we're at the point there, we're at the point at Pine Ridge where we're ready to, basically we've ordered the plugs for the ground. And once they're in, the area will be marked out and for sale. I'm looking at probably the latest June. I'll have about 2.5 acres for sale of newly developed area. The other one is also finishing up. ETL is giving me a date of late June, early July that they'll be out of the back of the cemetery. They've been using the cemetery as their setup area and so forth for the bridge construction down on down on Billrica Road.
Mm-hmm.
So they've given me that as a date when they'll be leaving, and at that point they'll clean up that area, take everything out of there, and basically they'll leave it the way they found it. They're gonna be relooming each side of it, bringing up the grade to the current grade of the new section. And that'll leave me with getting the new entrance ready and so forth for the fall. And then again, West Chelmsford that's the only cemetery I haven't paved yet. So just kind of working towards that, along with the fourth line would be the restoration of the wrought iron fence, and that continues as we've been doing that the past few years. That will continue. I would say probably another, depending on probably another at least, I would say 3 years, and that should complete that project. So that's kind of where we're at with that. As you can see with the I did increase the interments. The past 2 years, we ended up doing 240 interments for the calendar year for 2021, that's the most we've ever done. Fiscal year wise, for 21, we did 214. Calendar year, like I said, we did 240 for the year. So I based it on 200. The rate of cremation is 50%. When I worked that out, both fiscal year and calendar year, it actually was about 60-40, still full burials. So that really hasn't changed too much, which I was actually surprised at when I sat down in January and looked at those numbers. And as of March 1st, we did have a slight increase. We don't increase every year; we go up every 2 years. So we did increase the pricing a little bit on sale lots and interment fees and so forth. So that should bring in a little more revenue.
This is just the level service portion that you were discussing earlier.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, as far as that goes, like I said, it's level service. It's step increases, and also with the longevity, obviously, the longer years, the higher that gets percentage wise. And again, on the expenses, electricity, I lowered a little bit. Everything else basically was level funded. I did increase postage only because we're doing more lot sales, so we're sending out more deeds and so forth. So with lot sales, we usually average about 60 to 70, and for the fiscal year 21, we ended up 100% over that. We did 121 lot sales for fiscal 21, which was a huge increase. But it seems to be coming back down. Obviously, I'm sure that had something to do with what was going on with the COVID. So it was real busy, but it seems to be leveling off, coming back to 70. Like right now, looking here, FY22 as of today, I have 66 lot sales. So we're 70s, 75s, the regular. We still have 3 months left in this fiscal year, so we'll see where that goes. And obviously with the better weather, the winter months, people aren't pre-planning. Once the weather gets better, it'll get a little bit busier.
David, the numbers that you have there for diesel fuel and gasoline, have those been adjusted recently, or are those?
Those were adjusted. Those were adjusted within the past week or two. I did send an updated budget to Dave, and I can send it to all of you if you want me to. Like I said, it just adjusts. It adjusts for what's going on right now currently.
I think this might be the version. It has 1950 in there for.
Yeah, that is the current version. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that is. So we increased it, with the gas too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because literally, I just got a load of diesel fuel because we have our own tank at the cemetery. It was over $800, which is, I think, the highest bill and since I've been there for that fill.
What was it running last year? For a fill.
I was gonna say probably 400 to 500.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds unfortunately on tack there. Okay.
Yeah. So, and nothing else, like I said, nothing else really increased. And then as far as with the personnel, myself, George, Nick, Kyle left back in November prior to after this budget was completed and so forth. And since then, I have hired a new person.
Okay.
And so I do have a third person in place there, and Mary Ann is still there, and then I have the 3 commissioners, and it's myself and George who have the longevity there.
Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. Thank you as always.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you, Dave. Take care.
All right. Next on our agenda this evening, we have the review of fiscal year 23 budget for the Council on Aging Senior Center. With us this evening is the Human Services Director for that, Deborah Siriani. Deborah, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Great. Let me just pull up your budget here. Okay.
Great. Thanks for having me, everybody. For our increases this year, mainly the personnel are just step increases, and we have a few folks who have now been with us for more than 10 years and need longevity. So there's an increase in longevity, which I think is a good thing. Got good people staying with us, so that's great. But we do have that in the longevity line item. And then there's one other large increase that we asked for in the expenses, and that's for contracted services. And we've been looking to hire a nighttime custodian for quite a while, and we had it posted for 3 months, and we got one applicant that wasn't an appropriate applicant for the position. And so we've decided to ask for, we started a contract with a nighttime custodial service helping us at night. And so we'd like to pay, instead of an employee, we're paying it with the Friends money, and we'd like it to be put in our budget so that we can pay for them during the year. So that increases the contracted service line.
And of course, as you explain every year when
That's not the number I asked for here. This it says $12,000 there.
Nope, it's 31,128.
Okay.
It's the one I highlighted in yellow.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's covering it. Okay, great. I was like, hold on a minute. Yes, so that's what we're asking for there. And this has been a position that was always paid by Friends funding. And they've been saying for a couple of years now, gee, we'd really like to stop paying for staff members and pay for programming and things like that instead. And so this is our way to answer that and ask for the support of the town.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Thanks. So I noticed that some line items are actually going down. Like, is that how you're accommodating so you've got, newsletter is going down and
Yep.
what's the, newsletter, telephone, postage.
Vehicle maintenance.
Postage is the same, but, so we actually, our newsletter is going down because the town got a Xerox contract, all together. And so we were able to change our contract for printing costs. And so that's wonderful. And, let's see.
Water bill. I guess and your heat, you've got heat going in. I guess what I'm asking is, are those still accurate numbers? I mean,
Yes. So
is that adequate for your needs?
absolutely. So the telephone was also a contract that the town got taken care of, so our costs have gone way down. So we may actually be able to bring it down again next year after this. But for now, I'm keeping it at this number to make sure that we're able to, but it's less than it was. And then our heating isn't going down actually. It was just the 1 year, and it was during COVID that was 26,000. We had to have our doors and windows wide open to have activities in the main hall, because of ventilation issues. So for safety, and so our heating went way up that 1 year. And so God help us, we don't need to do that again. So, and then we also got solar panels, so it should be going down. Hopefully, it'll go down more than 18,000 after this year again. But it was 26,000 only for that 1 year because we had to have our doors and windows wide open to have activities in the building.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, what you put down here is adequate for your needs.
Absolutely, yes, thank you.
Have all programs returned now, Deb?
Yes, we just started our nighttime activities again, and that and our yoga class is basically the last one that we had to do. And then the only thing that we don't have going on that we had before was a lot of rentals of the building, and we don't have a nighttime or weekend custodian. We have nighttime but not weekends, and we have someone coming back. We had a staff person on military leave, and he's thankfully coming back at the end of the month. So we'll be able to start doing rentals again, hopefully soon. But all activities, it's very busy, it's very active. We're like our social day program is back up to the census it was. Our companion program is running. Meals on Wheels have been going on all along. Our lunch program is starting to pick up again, especially just in the past few weeks since the mask mandates have changed. For the state and the recommendations, not the mandate, but the recommendations have changed, and so we're just we're rolling along.
Excellent. Any other questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much for being here this evening, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Right. Let's see. Moving right along in our agenda, if I can find where it popped off on my screen. We have the review of fiscal year 23 budget for the finance department, which includes the accounting, assessors, information technology, and treasurer and collection. And with us this evening, we have our finance director and treasurer, John Souza.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Finance Committee.
Good evening.
Mr. Chairman. Oh, sure, thank you.
Yeah.
So while we're pulling that up, I just want to mention that I had an opportunity to meet with the finance department liaisons, which are Anita and John Tebow, and we met virtually back in on February 23rd, just to discuss the budget and go all through it. So this, as we scroll down after that, the first is just the introductory page. It explains what the 4 divisions are responsible for and our main duties. And then scrolling down, we have our goals for the upcoming year for all the different divisions. You could read through those. And then the next page shows the staffing. I just wanted to mention that the staffing will be, for the upcoming fiscal year, will remain exactly the same as the past several years, 14.4 FTEs. As you see there, that lists all the positions, and you can see them by each department. And then when we get beyond those, are some of the introductory information pages. Then the first budget we come to is the Treasurer Collector's Office. And so in the personnel area, that the personnel services budget is increasing by 14,877, which is just under a 4% increase. And that just covers steps for eligible personnel, any increases in longevity that employees may be eligible for. And then looking down the bottom half of the page is our expense budget, and everything is remaining the same except for contract services. There's a small increase of $2,000, and that's just for our Munis support contract, which is used by accounting and the treasurer's office. And so the total treasurer collector's office budget increases just under $17,000 for the upcoming fiscal year, which is just under 3%. If anybody has any questions, I can explain any of those accounts if you'd like.
John,
Yes.
can you explain how the longevity works?
Yes. So for non-union personnel, what it is you need to complete 10 years of continuous service to be eligible for longevity. And then every milestone that you reach, for example, 10 years, and then it goes up to as much as 20 years, you gain an additional percent. So it would be about, it starts at like 3% of someone's base salary, and then it would go to like 4.5%, and then ultimately 6% is the maximum that someone can earn. And so the idea is that when an employee, we usually have roughly 10 steps in the pay classification system. So the idea is that when an employee reaches 10 years of service, this is a benefit since they're not going up, they're not receiving steps anymore. The idea is that the longevity is it's a compensation so that they're not, a long-term employee has become out of step, so to speak, with a newer employee going up a step system all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this page? All right, move on to the next.
Okay, and then next is the information technology budget. And we have a lean department in this area, but we're fortunate to have the director and the network manager there. The personnel services budget is increasing around $8,950, or just under 4%. And again, this covers steps for eligible employees in this area and longevity that we just discussed for the other department. On the expense side, there's a couple things I'll note there. The computer maintenance line is increasing $29,000, and the reason for that is the department is going to be upgrading Microsoft licenses for all non-school users during the coming year. And the other thing is there's an additional $12,000 included in this budget line to cover so that they can finish replacing some older notebook computers. Just that there's roughly they usually try to do about roughly 1/5 of all the computers per year, so that every so many years all of the computers have been upgraded. And this will allow them to accelerate that, they want to upgrade those because with all what's going on with phishing and cybersecurity issues, we haven't, knock on wood, we haven't had any issues in that area, but we don't want to have older notebooks that have an older, outdated operating system. So this is going to allow Ted and Matt to accelerate that replacement. And then in the contract services line, that's increasing $10,000. That's for a contract firm that's going to be working on removing some older cable that's used on some of the utility poles around town that used to run an older hardwired fire alarm box. Many of you driving around town over years have probably seen them over the years. It's the old-fashioned red fire alarm box that you would see on the roadside. That became an antiquated system. The fire chief made the decision with the staff to phase it out, and however, the cables still remain, and so those need to be taken down so that the town does not run into issues with whenever someone damages a utility pole and we end up having a double pole, all of the wires have to be removed off of the older pole and then reinstalled on the newer pole. And so most of that stuff is owned by either National Grid or Verizon, but we do have a cable, as I understand, for our wiring for this older fire alarm. So that's the reason for that. And then most of the smaller accounts are remaining level funded for the coming year.
Can I ask a question about the telephone line item?
Sure.
Just refresh me why we went from basically minimal amount and then in FY20, up to 35,000. Now we're at 29,000.
Oh, yes. I can help you with that, Kathy. What that is up until fiscal year 20, the accounting office used to have an employee apportion the phone bill, like we would receive a large phone bill, and they would section it out and apportion the costs over a number of different departments under general government. And in talking with Darlene, it was taking a significant amount of time, and we met with the IT department, we met with the town manager, and we came to the conclusion that having a telephone charge under every budget, it really wasn't, it'd be more efficient to just put it all into technology, since we get an itemized billing from the provider, and that would be more efficient than charging, $1,000 to the treasurer's office and $1,500 to community development, for example. So that's why it appears for FY18 and 19 on this table to be so low for those 2 years.
Okay, thanks.
So, John, are all the charges for telephone now run through this line item in the information technology budget?
Yes, they're all, for all the landlines. The only exception would be departments that have cell phones. So the cell phones, those would still be paid by individual departments. Okay. But all the landlines will be charged under technology now.
Got it. I'm just trying to connect, but we just saw a presentation from the senior center with that a telephone line for 1,600. So just trying to.
For that type of charge, I would have to check with Debbie. That is most likely for a cell phone, but I could follow up with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. It did go down significantly after it was. Well, no, it went right. It was fiscal year 19. It was up around the 5. So that would jive with what you're showing here in the information technology budget. All right. Any other questions on the information technology portion? All right. Seeing none, I'll move along to the next.
Next, we have the assessor's office. So the assessor's personnel service budget is increasing just about $9,650 for the coming year, which is just over 3%. And again, that covers steps for eligible personnel, as far as and also longevity increase for anyone that's eligible for that. Under the expense area, That's increasing $6,200. And the main reasons for that, I'll touch upon those accounts. The revaluation update line, that's increasing $3,000. Frank has reviewed with me, our chief assessor, that he is going to need to have some contracts work done on some special accounts. For example, his office is responsible for having a lot of the personal property that involves poles and wires for utility companies valued. It has to be done a certain way to DOR standards, and so he'll be getting some contract services assistance with those accounts in the coming year. Next, if you skip down about halfway of the tax bill line, this line covers the printing and mailing of all the real estate and personal property bills, and that's increasing $3,000. Our printer has held the line on the printing for several years. With the inflationary environment we're in, we're going to be looking at a slight increase on printing, and then the rest is just the other reason for that increase is just to cover rising postage costs. And finally, the last line, staff education, increases by $200, just to cover some seminars for assessors office employees that are eligible to go for staff development. And that pretty much covers that budget.
I'm sorry, could I just ask why the dues and subscriptions went up so much? They went from 670 to 6,000?
Yeah, let's see, I believe, let's see on that line, I know the office utilizes CoStar, which is a real estate, you have to pay for the subscription. And I believe it's CoStar and another contract services firm that Frank will be utilizing to do the reval work. I can go over that with them and I try to get you a more detailed answer.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So, John,
Yes.
just a quick question. So if we didn't fund the postage, you wouldn't be able to send the tax bills out?
Right.
That's excellent. I was just being facetious.
No. Yeah, we may have people that want to cut that line. Yeah, so I will mention, just if people may be watching, our printer helps us out because they sort all the real estate and personal property, and they do, if we were trying to do this ourselves, it would be almost impossible for the amount of staff and equipment we have in-house. And they actually, by them doing sorting, we actually get a much better postage rate per envelope than what we would if we were doing it ourselves.
I was going to say that's a relatively low number for the amount of mailings that have to go out.
Yes, no, it's pretty. And when you consider the amount of money that we're collecting, and the printers worked with us well over the years and really, tried to keep the costs reasonable.
Any other questions regarding the assessors? All right, seeing none, we'll move along to the final.
And then we have the accounting office. The accounting office personnel services budget is increasing just over 16,000, which is a 4.5% increase, and that covers steps for eligible personnel and also any increase for personnel that may be eligible for longevity. In the expense area, there's one change this year. If you read down, it's probably like 3 or 4 lines from the bottom, the audit services line, that's increasing to 52,000, which is an increase of $5,500. And the reason for that, you may have seen, if you watched a recent presentation to the select board, we have a new audit contract with a different auditor that's going to be handling the FY22 and FY23 and FY24 audits. And so we've been with Powers and Sullivan for a number of years. We're now moving to a different auditor. And as you can imagine, with the labor market being very tight, and also there are some startup costs for the new audit firm to become familiar with our, basically they have to obtain 2 or 3 years of historical financial data from Darlene, upload that so they become familiar with, so if they have years to base historical trends off of. They also have to meet with myself and other folks to gain knowledge on all of our outstanding long-term debt that we have and other information. So there's some startup costs with that, and that's the reason for the increase in that line. And I believe most of all the other line items in this account are pretty much level dollar funded from the current fiscal year. So in total, accounting is increasing just over 21,000, or just over 5%.
Any questions? All right. Seeing or hearing none, John, thank you very much for presentation on all 4 departments as always.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, moving along on our agenda, we have a review of the Springtown meeting warrant articles. With us this evening, of course, we have our town manager, Paul Cohen.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to pull up your presentation. Give me 1 minute. Right.
Okay. Again, the chair asked me to give an overview of the articles. I thought the most effective way to do it would be visually, and to use the shell of the town meeting presentation to do that. There's 35 articles, and I'll just sort of pass through them, and then as some of them you'll get into more detail when the relevant department heads come in, such as DPW and so forth. So the first article in the warrant is the reports and committees. Obviously, there's no action on that in terms of financial or otherwise. We'll hear from the master plan committee. We'll give an overview at town meeting and so forth. Moving on, we'll then go to a consent agenda. And at this point, again, just to give you a flavor in terms of how the town meeting would go, this is my pass. It hasn't been, I haven't coordinated with the moderator yet, but I think we roughly could have 10 articles that we could do on the consent agenda, which are very similar articles that we had last year. It's actually a smaller number, but it's generally the same topics. And I think this is already a conservative number. So, and I'll go through those as we move into it. So again, you then take the 35 articles down to 25 actions at town meeting by doing the consent agenda. Article 2 is the next slide, is the adjustments to the current year operating budget, and we haven't assembled that yet. We will sit with the town accountant, meaning John Souza, the finance director, and I will sit with Darlene, and we'll, in a couple of weeks, and we'll sort of say, okay, what do we need for the last quarter of the year, and where are we trending? And as usual, things that we anticipated a year ago didn't always come out as exact, which is the nature of this business, particularly with personnel turnover and unforeseen activities. So that's why everything is still X's on this slide, but that will be the first real action at town meeting. And again, we'll try to get this to you if possible before you wrap up your meetings and hopefully get it into the book. Article 3 is the placeholder for collective bargaining agreements. There's only one that's outstanding, because we're just commencing the new bargaining round, because all of the town's collective bargaining agreements and on the school side expire June 30th of this year. In a few months, we're just basically doing ground rules with unions right now. So I don't anticipate anything for April, but given that it's only 6+ weeks away. And obviously there's no activity on the loan outstanding contract with the police superior officers / sergeant union. So that'll be a consent item with no agenda, no action. Article 4 will be Neshoba Tech. That's the number from the assessment. and then I'll insert, you'll have Dr. Pigeon and her staff present to you at an upcoming meeting, and then I'll insert her presentation once it's available. Article 5 is the same with the school department. It's $67.5 million. Dr. Lang and the school committee held a hearing just over a week ago, I guess 9 days ago, where they reviewed the budget line by line, page by page for the $67.5 million. And so I think they're pretty much intact. And again, you'll be hearing from them directly regarding their budget requests, and presentation will be inserted. Let's see, moving on to the town, which is Article 6, the general government budget of the town. We've submitted, as you know, a budget to that at the end of January. But as David noted and John noted earlier, right now I've inserted X's, and part of it is they want, it's a little fluid because really what's happening in terms of the oil commodities market. As David noted, we adjusted his budget, and John and I basically reached out to the major departments, being police, fire, and DPW, and suggested they hike their fuel budgets by 20%. And who knows if that number is going to be right, because remember, we're trying to budget for a period that starts over 3 months from now, July 1st, and will run through June 30th of 2023. So, I mean, I don't want to be using $5 a gallon, but we're not going to use $2.40 a gallon. So we basically, John particularly was the lead in this, but we sat with the different chiefs and department heads and say, hey, what are you using for your fuel cost estimates and so forth? And so again, those will be presented to you in the weeks ahead. And again, we welcome your feedback as well in terms of if you think 20% isn't the right number and what have you. And so that's why we still have X's. And then when it comes time to wrap everything up, we'll just, when you complete your reviews, we'll just sum out the numbers. So that's Article 6. Article 7, the consent agenda item, the Finance Committee Reserve Fund. We've left that at $400,000, as it's been historically. So again, we obviously use it this year, and who knows where we'll be in the upcoming year in terms of reserve fund in this environment that's so uncertain as we exit COVID into whatever's normal, but with this high inflation, and we'll see where we go. So Article 8 is the capital budget. John gave you the presentation. It's all unchanged, so I'm not going to walk you through the capital budget. John reviewed the $3.77 million when we did the budget presentation at the end of January. So again, all the summaries and slides are all in here for what John presented. So again, I'm not going to go through that into detail. So then that brings us to, when we complete that article, we now move to an historic preservation restriction. And the reason that it's here is twofold. One is the following article pertains to the property where the preservation restriction is to take place, and they're intertwined. So let me just explain what's going on here. The property is obviously the Oddfellows Santander Bank property at 1 Groton Road, 44 Central Square. And how the property exists today is the Oddfellows building that you see under construction there in the center, that's a separate lot now under separate ownership, and that was separated with what they call an approval not required process through the planning board, even though you do need their approval. So it's the most misnomer of processes in government, but that's been approved and that exists. And then the other branch, the parcel that's been separated is where the Santander Bank branch exists today. That's a separate parcel with a new lease and actually a new owner. So what's remaining is the Fisk house and the municipal parking area in the back that sort of cuts across the property. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, the owner of the property went to the planning board and request a approval not required to separate those two parcels. One is so that they can sell in the Fisk house, and the other one is so that they can engage and sell the parking area to the town. The planning board curiously basically said, okay, we'll approve the separation of the lot. However, it's contingent upon a preservation restriction for the Fisk house. And that preservation restriction has to be approved by the Historic District Commission and the Historical Commission. And that's where we are today. 6 weeks from town meeting. The Historical Commission discussed it earlier this week. They then formed a subcommittee that's actually meeting at 10 a.m. in the library this Saturday morning. And we're trying to bring closure to this process. But whatever comes out of it in terms of restriction, it has to be authorized by town meeting, and therefore the selectmen are then the executing authority for that. So that's what's going on here on that property. And I think what they're trying to do is to make sure that there are no alterations to the exterior of the Fisk House building because of its prominence in the town center and its historical significance. So that's what that article is. And again, we're hoping this gets worked out in the next few weeks so that that town meeting goes fine and that I don't want one of these 11th hour things that none of us want on the doorstep of town meeting, nor do we want it to scuttle everything because the owner has basically said, you can't convey the parking lot to the town unless you have the lot separated because the town can't execute it or record it unless it's its own lot. So that's where we're at. Article 10 is a purchase of the 1.8 acre parcel in the rear of the property that's known commonly as the municipal parking area in the town. The next slide shows the picture of where it is, just to orient you for anybody who's watching the meeting. But you can see the parking area to the bottom right of the parcel, 1.89 acres. Again, we've had an appraisal done. What we don't have is I don't have a signed purchase and sale. That's why I don't have the dollar amount in the article. But assuming that gets done in the weeks ahead, I'll bring it to you, and then you'll be able to take your votes and hopefully decide whether to support that purchase. So that's it's been given the capital nature, but that's why it's at the front of the article. So that's what's taking place there. So you can see the peculiarity is you can see the lots separated here on the parcel. You've got the bank branch to the top center, and then you got the Oddfellows building to the left there. You can see they're separate parcels, and now you've got this huge parcel in the middle that is it goes from the Fisk House to the rear of the property. So hopefully this will all get resolved with the different boards in the next few weeks. So that's Article 10.
Excuse me, Paul.
Go ahead. Yes, please. No, please interrupt at any time.
I'm sorry, I find that all completely confusing, but we'll step aside from my not knowing what's happening. So the parking lot where people have been parking for a long time is what
Yes.
will be owned by the town.
Yes.
If this goes through.
Yes, and we had an appraisal done that values that parking lot, and that's been shared with the seller. The seller's agreed to sell at that price, and that's how it'll move forward to town meeting. So we're just waiting again to basically draw another yellow line, because I think what it ends up, the Fisk House ends up with 3 parking spots when it's all done.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's how it'll work out. The town will then have the lower area there for the parking area, and then there's obviously parking. There's common parking for the bank branch and the restaurant that's being constructed. So that's what's happening. Go ahead.
Yeah, Paul, do we know where the division of the lot's going to occur? Is that available on a A&R plan somewhere?
Yeah, it is, because it was presented to the planning board.
The planning board, yeah.
Let me send that to you. I'll send you the A&R plan. I'll do that. I'll send that to you, so that way. And in fact, I'll insert it so it's clear rather than.
So it's clear where the new lot is, yeah.
Than the whole lot. Okay, I'll do that.
Perfect, thank you.
So that's what's happening there. And again, the goal is to preserve the parking in the center as opposed to a development that could potentially be permitted for that parking lot area. Article 11 is a article for the reconstruction of the high school tennis and basketball courts and the conversion of the Mccarthy school tennis courts into an additional parking area. And the next slide, the number is 1.2 million, but that's tentative at this point in time because we're still getting pricing on that. And we're still considering something for the Mccarthy area. So anyway, what you see here is the high school tennis courts. Obviously, the bottom half of that, which is the green and rust colored of the 6 tennis courts, and then to the top of the left of the 3 basketball courts, and then to the right of the street hockey courts. So those need to be reconstructed. We've sort of, similar to the parking lot, they lived their useful life. Now it's come time to replace the surfaces of those facilities. So that's what we're working on. The next slide also shows you the Mccarthy school tennis courts behind the police station. So the police station is to the top right. You can see the Mccarthy track to the left there, and then Mccarthy building with the solar panels to the bottom center. The plan is to basically demo and remove and not reconstruct the tennis courts at Mccarthy. They're not heavily utilized. They're really, doesn't seem to be a need for 6 more additional tennis courts at Mccarthy beyond what we have across the street at the high school. So, and then below that to the left is the skate park. So that's what that's what the plan is. And the idea would be is you would open up the additional parking to the police station, which abuts that, to the below the police station building, to go into the Mccarthy area and have shared parking. And also when there's events and activities at Mccarthy, the additional parking may be of assistance to them as well. Now there's a cost obviously to remove that and demo that. That's why we're trying to get all this total cost figures. But in the meantime, we're also exploring a grant opportunity. We're pursuing a possible grant for a pickleball facility. And pickleball, it's increasingly popular. We built one outdoors over at
Varney.
over at the Varney, and there's an increasing demand for pickleball, which you can play on outdoor tennis courts, but there's also a grant potential for a potential indoor type of facility. So we're exploring that at these 2 locations that you're seeing depicted here at Mccarthy behind the police station and also over at the high school. So we're hoping, we're working with an engineer and with the superintendent of the schools and public works director. So we may have some clarity on that hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And again, that would also shape the final numbers of this project. So more to come, but that's what this article is regardless of what happens is we really need to do the tennis courts at the high school because they're at the end of the useful life. I mean, it was a point where a couple summers ago, CYBL was questioning whether they could even have their program. So we've been sort of patching it and it's at the point now at the parking lot at the high school.
I think they've been on the docket for like 10 years now. I think it's come up every year as a need, but that can't be addressed. So I'm glad to hear that that's headed that way. As far as the parking versus pickleball situation with McCarthy, with the grant, I know you're still working on getting the information for that. Do you have any type of idea of what that facility might look like, how big it would be, and would there still be parking available, additional parking available? Because I know at McCarthy, especially for events where they have shows and programs, that the parking over at McCarthy can be very difficult. And additional parking there would certainly be helpful.
Yeah, in a scenario, there would be additional parking even with the pickleball facilities. Okay. That's what we're looking at. Yep. And it also may possibly, one of the ways we may be able to achieve that is we may relocate the skateboard park to the high school, facility since we're reconstructing that, and that would free up a little more space here. So that's one of the nuances that we're considering. So that's that article, and again, more to come. The next article I placed towards the front is the school bus tracking system. This was a citizen petition article by Chris Oak and the 10 signatures to investigate implementing a school bus tracking system. Again, there's been no discussion with the school committee. I guess my suggestion would be to invite him to appear before you, and perhaps you may be able to get a bit closer understanding as to what he may be seeking.
Yeah, we will certainly reach out to him.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I placed it here out of consideration rather than you want to put him number 34. Anyway, let him come in. So that's what that article is. Article 13 is a special education reserve fund, and what it is, it's a local acceptance option of a state statute that I think's been around for a few years now. And it's chapter 40, section 13E, as noted on the screen. But the next slide just sort of gives you a summary of what it is. And what it is it allows the school committee to establish and transfer money to a reserve fund that can be utilized for future fiscal years to pay for unanticipated or unbudgeted costs of special education programs, out-of-district tuition, or transportation. So basically, what the notion is given the variability of special education services and transportation related, if there are years where they catch a break, they can sort of squirrel it into a future year. And then if the need arises, they can draw upon it when things may go the other way because of the unpredictability of special ed. When we're doing budgets, again, months in advance of a fiscal year that starts. What the law does say is that the balance of such special education reserve fund can exceed 2% of the annual net school spending of a school district or department. In our case, it couldn't exceed 1.5 million based on our net school spending of about 75 million. I don't think that's an issue because I don't see they're going to be putting in that kind of money, certainly initially. And then the key thing to remember is the funds can be withdrawn from the fund and expended by majority vote of not a school committee, but a majority vote of the select board. So I think that was sort of, the nuance of this thing when they were doing, the reform that wrapped into was, okay, help them, but let's a little more visibility and transparency by having the select board be involved with the votes. So therefore, and just so you know, a regional school can just do it as well, such as in the Neshoba Tech, but they would need a majority vote they would need a majority of the select boards of the member communities to do it. So it's the idea of making sure that at least there's some executive oversight for the fund. So that's what happens here. So that's the request. So it's not an appropriation. It's just the local acceptance that would allow this to occur. And then obviously if it did occur, the town accountant would report, as she does annually to you and periodically otherwise, what the balance is in the fund and so forth. So that's that Article 13. Article 14, now we start getting into more, traditional articles. Sewer enterprise fund for the year, the 4.49 million. Again, when you bring in DPW, they'll walk you through the enterprise budget. It's up 2.5%, as you can see. Same thing, stormwater enterprise fund budget is 1.5 million. That's up. The expenditures are up in salaries and expenditures are up by 0.86%. So again, DPW and Gary and them can walk you through that when they come, but you can see there's not a lot going on here. Then we get to the Forum Ice Strength Enterprise Fund, which is for the general operations of the Forum. That again remains unchanged at $60,000. That'll be a consent agenda. Same thing, cable access, $605,000, which is, again, essentially unchanged from where he is now, which comes from the surcharge on your cable bills. And again, things are still running solid as noted there. Then Pete does have a request to use some of the PEG access free cash or undesignated fund balance, 90,000 of it, to upgrade the Parker School studio with new cameras and switching equipment that is detailed on the next page. Sorry, it's hard to read, but
that's an eye chart.
Yeah, you know an eye chart. But anyway, so that's what he's looking for: new cameras, new switching equipment, and such at Parker School for $90,000. So
We'll have Pete in, I believe, next week. So
yeah, again, so Pete can walk you through that. 19 again is the annual renewal of the Golf Course Enterprise Fund, which is basically unchanged at $30,000. Although I heard we heard today or yesterday from the contractor, he's raising his rates about a couple dollars around too. So but I don't think it's going to affect the enterprise fund total. Article 20 is the annual revolving funds, and those numbers are unchanged annually. So that's another consent agenda item. Article 21 is the sale of graves and lots of the Cemetery Improvement Fund. David Boyle earlier touched upon that. The amount is $40,000 for that ongoing work at the cemeteries. Article 22 is again, another consent agenda item. It's the annual $10,000 appropriation to the Community Action Program Fund, for community improvement projects, like Eagle Scout things and so forth. So Girl Scouts and such. Article 23 is no action. That's the Affordable Housing Stabilization Fund, I had it as a placeholder. I confirmed today with the town account, there's no funding in the account, and likely won't be over the next 6 weeks, so there'll be no action. I think the balance now, after we just did the vote last week at town meetings, like $2,500. So again, no action under that consent agenda. Article 24, we get into community preservation. This is always the introductory article, which is setting aside the 10% buckets, the 145,000, and the 50,000 for their admin expenses. The article goes on to, again, there's the estimated forecasted revenue for the upcoming fiscal year of 1.36 local, and then a state match of 425 for a total of 1785. The next slide sort of, again, talks about the 10% allocation, and the budget reserve, and then there's the debt service for fiscal 23. It drops slightly down to 496. And you can see this is the last year for the payment on Sheehan Farm, fiscal year 23. So again, that'll free up a little bit of money in future years. So that's pretty much, again, because that's existing projects and requirements of the 10%. Article 25, we now get into community preservation projects, new projects. The first one is a request for an additional $200,000 for the purchase and installation of new playground equipment at Barney Playground. You remember the initial vote on this was a year ago at the June 2021 spring annual town meeting. You see the next slide, the equipment is over 20 years old, and it needs to be ADA compliant. And then you see the following slide is, again, we appropriated $285 last June for the Barney. Remember, that was a consolidated article along with the Southwell playground equipment at the time. And then there's an additional $200,000 to fund the additional equipment that's being sought by the neighborhood or community, along with site drainage and grading improvements to make it fully accessible and appropriate fencing. There's been a little bit of a dust up in the last 48 hours on this, and it's being discussed as we speak at the Final Square Strategic Action Plan Committee. So, and given that we're only 6 weeks out from town meeting, I think one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to get pulled, or it's going to move forward. Obviously, only two outcomes. But and my concern with it being pulled, which I think is likely, even though there was a subcommittee that worked on this for quite some time, about a year and a half, that we thought was representative of the community, it's just the costs are escalating significantly, and that's one of the reasons why we're back for additional funding. And again, because these things are petroleum based. I mean, all those plastics and those surfaces that are there for the playground are petroleum based. And I had given the green light to say, hey, yeah, let's put in a pre-order. And I think tomorrow morning I'm going to say, let's scrap that pre-order, which was sort of forwarded about a week ago because of this latest concerns. So anyway, that's more to come on Barney. And again, it'll probably be I imagine hopefully it'll sort itself out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Can I ask on that, Paul, specifically? Yeah. I think, Kathy, you'll be meeting with CPC, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll reach out to them too, just to see what the plan looks like currently, because I think there's a lot of stuff a lot of information being put out there. It may not be all the accurate information, and including the fact that this is a 20-year-old park. Yeah, it's a unique park. It's a wooden park, but the discussion we had last year when we voted on it was the fact that it isn't ADA compliant. There are things that are failing. And it's a safety issue, and I think we can have DPW speak to that as well, because that was part of the discussion we had last year. So with CPC, Kathy, if when we're scheduling that, if we could get a little bit more of that information, when Eric and I speak with DPW, we'll ask about the safety concerns about that as well, but also just some more visuals of what we're looking at as far as the equipment, because you're right, Paul. I'm concerned about the escalating costs of this becoming cost prohibitive, and there being a situation where we might even have to close portions of it down for safety concerns. I know pieces have been removed over the last few years that were no longer safe. So yeah,
exactly. I mean, it's costly as it is. I mean, let's see what it is. It's already $485,000, for the park there, which is not insignificant. and unlike what we saw at Roberts Field and what you'll see at the center school, there's been no local contribution or fundraising. And it's a limited ave because there's wetlands and so forth. So, and there are real drainage issues there. And there, so there's a lot that, again, Steve Callahan and others has worked on this with folks up there, and now to sort of have this 11th hour. I understand the sentiment. It is unique what's there today, but you couldn't repair or replace that piecemeal, in today's world, and so it's just alarming. So I have requested a independent structural analysis to be done, because I'm convinced they won't take the word of our playground professional. So we'll get that report, and so you may see demo, and that's another loss by postponing it, is because now we'll have a season where there won't be a playground, which is what we were trying to avoid. So
yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, so that's that. Article 26 is the center school playground, which here they're requesting $82,000 for the purchase and installation of new playground equipment. But this, as you see in the next slide, this is a $270,000 project. And so the playground is over 20 years old. Dr. Lang the school department is kicking in $138,000 from their funding availability, and then the center school PTO is contributing $50,000. So again, the $82,000 match, and again, it'll match what's happened at many of the other schools like Harrington, where we've installed this type of equipment successfully. So that's 26. 27 is another outdoor fitness article, and this is for an outdoor fitness park, which sort of is, I guess, the adults' version of outdoor fitness, as opposed to the children's playgrounds. And again, we'll get the grant on this one, and we're proposing to locate it at the corner of Wilson Street and Chelmsford Street. And the next slide shows you where we're looking to put it. And you can see it's that square corner there on the bottom, because there's parking nearby. It's visible. The grant holder, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, they wanted at a very visible and high traffic, lack of a better word, location. And it's about as close as we could get to the rail trail, as well as the volume of traffic that goes along, Chelmsford Street in that area from the center. So it would be very visible. The next slide shows you what it looks like. And that's the facility. That's the one in Burlington that's going to be opening in a couple of months. It has 30 pieces of body weight equipment. And apparently the goal is that you can do a 7-minute full body workout for people of all ages and ability levels. And so again, we've been awarded a grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts and National Fitness, and I think there's one going in Tewksbury as well. And I think Blue Cross put in $750,000 statewide for these facilities. These are already existing in warmer climates of the country, and so now they're sort of making their way up here, and we believe we'll be all set in terms of weather issues, for the winter season. Again, so that's the effort there.
So
good.
So it's a grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm sure much like the one we're seeing here in Burlington with the Leggy branding, there'll be Blue Cross and Blue Shield branding on the ones going in here. What's the exposure and liability that we face for this equipment?
It's like the outdoor equipment we have over at Roberts Field. Yeah, there isn't any because we're not charging a fee, and we're not instructing. We're not instructing, and those are the keys in the world of municipal insurance liability. It's don't charge a fee, and don't instruct. And as I just mentioned, we do have fitness stations around around Roberts Field and such. So that's the story here. So
is there any concern that's going to affect the softball field?
No, because the softball just uses that for real young toddlers. And and that's basically kids who can't put the ball out of the softball out of the infield area.
Well, they might try now.
They might. Well, good luck to them if they can do that. But really, the real serious softball takes place over at Southwell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Article, and again, Gary's been working with us on this, Gary Persichetti. So Article 28 is the another community preservation fund. Now we're getting into the HVAC systems. This one is from McKay, and this is $150,000 to install ventilation at McKay. And the reason for that is McKay is an over 120-year-old building that has no ventilation system. And how we're going to approach this in terms of cost reality and just the reality of the facility and being able to monitor stuff is we're basically going to install a split duct system, with the outside, it'll come through the lower floor, vents and so forth. But we're going to close the second floor to the public, which it probably is a good thing because it's very hard to monitor the second floor because it's literally a house. And therefore, the ventilation system will serve the main floor. And this should allow the patrons of McKay to be in a safe environment for particularly the upcoming winter seasons with whether it's COVID flu or other issues in that facility. And then Article 29 goes to the HVAC ventilation improvements at the North Town Hall. That's $74,900. And again, it's bringing in an older building up to current indoor air quality standards with ventilation units that also have the supplemental heating cooling capacity and controls, ductwork, and so forth. And then, yes, go ahead.
How is that building actually utilized? I mean, what sort of functions are happening there?
They call it a community facility as opposed to an art center. They have regular tenants, like there's a church that goes in there every Sunday and has church services. They have dedicated programs and and community activities, and so they're staying in the black. Believe it, COVID's been a tough thing on them because they had to shut down like everybody else. But when things were pre-COVID and probably post-COVID, there's probably an activity in the building, certainly weekly, but then there's probably special activities probably every couple of weeks. But they do have regular users up to the building, and that's who's back in there now. Is they haven't opened up yet to special events, but they have regular users in the facility. So it is carrying its costs, which is good.
Okay.
Article 30 is similar upgrades for the Center Town Hall system. Obviously, it's a bigger building, and therefore the cost is greater, but it's the same concept of what was done at North Town Hall. And so that's, same thing, just for the investment. Now we get to the easement articles to wrap up, the warrant. This one is we're granting an easement, and this has to do with the Warrant Pole property. And this one's at 115 Parker Road. And when we did the survey work as part of the preservation restriction and such on the property, it was clearly evident that the driveway at 115 Parker Road encroaches onto the property that's town owned, and therefore the holder of the restriction, as well as the property owner, we just want to iron this out so that, continue. It's been gone on for years that they have the right to cross their property, for a driveway. So there's been a plan produced, as you can see here, and there's a more detailed engineering plan, that would provide the easement. The other alternative is basically going to them and saying, you have no right to be here, rip up your driveway and, reload. I mean, there's no harm. So this request came from the Conservation Commission, and so this is the town granting an easement, to the property for that location. And then the next article is the same thing at 43 Hall Road, or also known as Cape Lane, but it's basically 43 Hall Road, and it's the same thing. The Warrant Pole property again has another finger that goes out to the roadway, and so what this does again is there's a slight encroachment on the driveway, and so again it's just a way of being good neighbors, and that's really not going to be a popular corridor other than for the neighborhood anyway. So that's Hall Road. Now we get into accepting of easements on Article 33, and this one is at 15 Harvard Street. That's where the old Glenview used to be, and where they built the condos. And when they got the approval to build that, you can see this little rectangle up that's 250 square feet in the top left of the property there. It says where the number 25 is, proposed easement. That is a public access, emergency access for the police and fire for this is the stuff that they do when they go through the planning board and go through all the egresses and so forth for the property. So again, it's been recorded as part of the project approval, and now technically town meeting has to accept the easement. So that's that property. And then the next one is at 240 Groton Road, and this is the multifamily, the duplex development up there off of Groton Road. Why this comes about is the sewer line. The best way for them to provide this sewer line was to go through Burton Lane. So the easement is that sort of rectangular stub that comes, and you can see it on the blow up, but that's the plan right there. That's the easement, to again provide the town the ability to maintain the sewer line on the property. And then the last article is for authorize the disposition of a 0.73 acre of town-owned land that we acquired by tax title a couple decades ago off of Summer Street, and then the town would sell it under the Procurement Act. And it's that blue square that you see outlined in there. You can see it's mostly wet, but as we looked into this, we can see why they wanted to acquire that property, because if you look real closely, that's a swimming pool and deck for the house that's right there on Billrica Road. So I don't know, and we pulled the permits on it. That thing has been there since 2017. So I don't know if the property owner is getting ready to sell or what's going on, but but obviously they've raised this issue to the town, saying, and I think what would happen is that property and then the one at the corner, I would guess that they may work together, and then they probably would just divide it where the rectangles meet there, since it's land of low value to the community. You can see on the slide there that the property is assessed for $28,400. The other option is he'd have to move the pool and the deck, and given that it's not an in-ground pool, it's not impossible, but there's no value to the town, and we've checked with the Conservation Commission. It's not part of any perk walk or any other future out there, so it's just another way of just getting it back on the tax rolls for the community. So that is the overview of the warrant. So my guess is probably 2 nights, given where we're going. And let's hope.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll see, but I think it won't be 1 night, just because we're representing the town meeting, but I think it may be 2 nights. But you can see there's no zoning bylaws, there's no general bylaws, there's no, it's mostly a financial warrant. I think Dennis Reddy would be thrilled, because he always said spring should be for the budget, and that's where we're at, so.
Excellent.
So thank you.
Thank you for being here and presenting that and running through that. And we'll look forward to seeing numbers once we have numbers on certain things. So we'll probably toward the night we vote, we'll check in again and see where we are, so we get a final tally through and run through on the ones we had some question marks on. Excellent. So next on our agenda is public comment, but I would like to take just a brief second to talk about where we're going from here as far as our meetings are concerned. So we'll have a meeting next week, next Thursday, and currently slated for that next meeting, we have the fire department, the police department, Board of Health, the veterans agent, and then potentially DPW, although they might go the following week. Eric and I will iron that out when we meet this week with next week with the DPW. As far as I know, Dave, there have been a request by Dr. Pigeon to come in potentially next week or the week after. I think given the other departments that are presenting that evening, I think it would be fine to have them come in next week if they want to come in next week, unless anyone thinks that we should push that to the next following week.
Again, just as long as I can give her an answer, you know, either week will work, either the 17th or the 24th.
Yeah. And then Sam, do we just have confirmation that Pete's able to come in for next week, or is he looking to come the week after?
No, he can come in next week, but he would like to be at the front end of the meeting if possible.
That's correct, and you'd mentioned that. So that's perfect. And then we have library and the CPC. CPC will probably be a little bit involved, Kathy. But I don't know. Have you spoken with?
I'm sorry to admit that I have been totally lax in my responsibilities. So I will contact everybody tomorrow about possible dates.
Excellent, excellent. Just remember, for posting purposes, to get the agenda up within the statutory period. If you can let me know by noon on Tuesday where departments are and if they can present next week, that's when they have to get the agenda together and over. And then again, we have this week, the following week. Have we had discussions with the Chelmsford Public School District about when they would like to present?
I haven't. And Dave, are you with me with the school department again this year, or am I on my own?
It would be an honor.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think
So,
Sam has to be on that too.
Kathy, for some crazy reason, I volunteered for that. I still don't know why, but maybe it's because you're the lead person. I don't know.
So I'll send out. I'm sorry that I've been.
No, not a problem at all, Kathy. So why don't we then this? Why don't we plan on having a show by next week, and then the following week we'll leave open for Chelmsford, for the library, for CPC. We'll get in contact with the citizen petitioner to see if they want to present either this coming week or the week after, and then we'll be rifling through. That'll bring us to the end of March, and then we'll be into April. Town meeting is the last week in April, last Monday in April, so April 25th is the first night of town meeting. So we want to try to have our votes really,
Right.
the last possible time we could possibly have a vote would be the 7th. And that's really cutting it close, because we want to get statutorily we don't have, or through the code, we don't have to have the book out until a week prior to town meeting. However, we want to get out as soon as possible. So let's see what we can get on the docket for next week to try to get through as many additional departments as we can, and then if we're able to start voting the following week in March, the last week in March, we can do that. If not, we'll reserve that April 7th date. Oh, you know what? I'm skipping March 31st. We have 4 Thursdays in March this month. We have a unique month. So forget what I just said. The 31st we'll target to do our vote and any other final presentations. So between next week the 17th and then the 24th, let's look to get the rest of our presentations in. If the one or two have to come on the 31st, that's fine. The 31st we'll plan as a target for taking our vote, with a last case resort being April 7th. But really, we want to try to have this wrapped up in March so that we can prepare the letter, get the book together, and get it ready for town meeting. Because unlike the last couple of years, I don't foresee us going into June.
No.
Good news.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll update that table, and I'll email this to everybody, just so you have an update of when we're targeting things and when we want to have people in, and then we can get that squared away.
So Dave and Sam, we can talk online about when you'd be available to have a Zoom with the schools.
Well, I'm doing the Shelburne Tuesday morning. I believe it's Tuesday morning. I gotta check, I haven't looked at my calendar, but I think it's next Tuesday morning. Other than that, I can try to work with you.
Okay, and Sam, do you have any limitations or
I'm,
that you want to share?
no, I'm generally free, most days except between the hours of 3:30 and 5 in the afternoon. And other stuff, I can work around the FinCom commitment. So I'm pretty open.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll even meet on a Friday. I don't care.
All right, excellent. So, like I said, I'll send this out, and then just for each week's agenda, if people can let me know no later than midday Tuesday, so we get the agenda out and together, that'd be great. And I'll ask that if materials is provided by the department you're meeting with, if you can just email that to the group so that we have it in preparation for the meeting that week, and we can include the stuff that's come over in our, at the very least, in our minutes. And Pam, for this evening, I'll get over the information I have to you to make sure you have it all to go along with the minutes for tonight's meeting. All right. Any further public comment? Seeing no one in the participation room, hearing none here, I'll go to press questions. There are no press available or present this evening, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.